lazy, entitled, naive. These are the words we so often hear from older generations when they talk about us. And while I completely reject this characterization when it's used to talk about our new understandings of boundaries, well-being, and fairness, I cannot deny there is a grain of truth to this criticism. Because when I step back and look at Gen Z more broadly, I do see something troubling. A growing disengagement in civics education, current events, and collective action, and a growing, brewing distrust in the institutions that run our countries. But there is something the people handing us this future are missing. We are not indifferent because we can't care. We are overwhelmed. What I see is a generation that is anxious, uncertain, and desperately searching for ways to cope in the face of an increasingly unstable future, searching for humor and levity in this chaos, searching for meaning in the little things, because the big things feel too heavy to hold. But now is not the time to shut down or look away. Now is the time to care. But how did we get here? Gen Z is often dismissed as apathetic, but this apathy is not natural. It is a learned, protective response to a world that feels overwhelming, disempowering, and constantly on fire. Jiddu Krishnamurti said, "It is no measure of health to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. We live in perpetual crisis mode, climate disaster, economic precarity, war, and social collapse. We grew up in a world where school shootings were normalized and the world was literally on fire before we learned how to drive. How can we be expected to cope in the same ways that the generations before us did? How can we be expected to react and protest in the ways our parents and grandparents did when we see the change they fought to make being repealed before our very eyes?" But Gen Z does cope with a laugh, a meme, a 15-second TikTok dance. And we see this emotional whiplash from crisis to coping all around us as we watch our TV screens shift from coverage of genocide to parodies of our world leaders. Imagine being handed a house on fire and being told to, within it, just light a candle of hope, to look for coping strategies in the smoldering ashes flooding through your fingers. We also see an issue of Gen Z conflating caring with cringe, sincerity with vulnerability, vulnerability with weakness, a constant mantra of, "It's not that deep." But our world is deep. It is aching, in need of those who can feel and not just scroll past. And this defensive apathy, it doesn't just block pain, it blocks joy and action and change. It blocks passion and drive and a fight for the future. Yet we are the lucky ones. We can afford to sink into this apathy, this nihilism, this endless chant of nothing matters. We are able to look away. Millions of others around the world do not have the same choice. Therefore, caring is a privilege, but it is also a responsibility, because we know from history that if we don't care, someone else with more power and worse intentions will. So how do we shift from this tuned-out generation to one that is ready to fight for the future? Well, first, we need to take a step back. Have a look at the factors holding us down in order to forge forward. Our general definition of an activist is someone who believes strongly in political or social change and takes part in activities such as public protests to make this happen. I want our generation to forge a new meaning of the word, because we live in an attention economy where the focus of your eyeballs is worth its weight in gold to advertisers, campaigners, and rage baiters. Becoming one of these new activists should be about sifting through the proverbial junk to find the core, to find what matters, and then acting on it. And what matters to me is going to be different to what matters to you. You need to find that spark. Because we live in a shifting world, and it's important to recognize that the stereotypical versions of activism, advocacy, and change-making aren't for everyone. Not everyone can raise their voice high, has the ability to build a community around their idea, or is built to lead from the front. But it is the differences between us that can help promote the most positive change for our world. In order to start caring, you need to find that spark, the thing that drives you, the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. It doesn't have to be big. In fact, the smaller it is, the easier it'll be to fan that flame and nurture it. In this world, constantly on fire, caring about everything the same intense amount is a great way to burn out. Caring about something is how you build a fire that lasts. The spark doesn't have to be big, it just has to be yours. Your friends that you love so much are aspects of their lives made harder due to poverty and a lack of access to safe housing. That book series you adore, are there countries and places in the world where people and children cannot read books like this? That sport you love, are there communities without the access to gear, facilities, or even the freedoms to play safely? This is how you start to care. You take what lights you up, then you follow the smoke to where that fire is burning in somebody else, somebody without the opportunity to create the change you can. This new activism is not about shouting into a megaphone. It is about asking these better questions. Sometimes it looks like refusing to look away. Sometimes it looks like showing up consistently in these small spaces where your care can grow into action. Every ad, every reel, every angry comment is someone bidding for your attention. When you choose what to care about, you reclaim your focus. This is our new activism. And to be one of these new activists, you don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. You just need to be real. It is not about preaching, it is about inviting. The most powerful kinds of persuasion don't come from perfection, they come from connection. Just by choosing to put your attention on a message of inspiration rather than a distraction, you've made a direct choice to be an active member in this changing society. But change is not sustainable just through the active few. In order to create the monumental change we need, in order to alter the course of the snowballing future, we need unification. Unification of the nation of Aotearoa, unification of the generation of Gen Z, and unification at the foundation of everything we do. But it's important to remember that the people we're trying to unify will not change their minds because you tell them they are wrong. People change when they are moved by something in you that feels true. No one was ever guilt-tripped into caring deeply, but they have been moved by seeing someone who did. If you care loudly, honestly, and with aroha, people will feel it. It is not your job to change others' minds or their perceptions of the world. It is your job to build the space for them to be moved. It is not your job to wake everybody up, but it is your responsibility to stay awake yourself. Model the kind of engagement you wish others had. That is more powerful than any form of persuasion. Encourage curiosity over confrontation. Ask questions. Share stories. Be a mirror, not a megaphone. We also forget the influence we have in our own circles, because you do not need a platform to change the world. You need a dinner table, a group chat, a conversation, a classroom. The world changes in these small convos, not just in writing and war. Use emotional storytelling. People remember how you made them feel more than what you actually said. No one is inspired by a stat sheet. They are moved by a story, by a face, by a moment that made the issue real. Kurt Vonnegut knew this when he wrote Slaughterhouse 5 after the horrific bombings of Dresden. John Hersey knew this when he released the stories of survivors of Hiroshima amid American cover-up. And you know it. When an issue only feels real and tangible once the disaster's victims have a face and a name. When you show others what it means to care, when you show them who they are caring about, you don't just light your own fire, you spark theirs too. They say we are lazy, entitled, naive. I say we are powerful, persistent, and hopeful if we choose to be. So care when it is hard. Care when it feels small. Care because the alternative is despair. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Thank you.